The single most consequential decision you make for your kidneys every day happens before you leave your bedroom. Not at dinner, not in a doctor's office. In those first minutes of the morning when your body is emerging from hours of fasting and your kidneys are transitioning from their overnight filtering work into the demands of a new day, the first thing you pour into your system either supports that transition or compromises it. And the vast majority of people, without realizing it, are making choices in the morning that their kidneys are paying for quietly, incrementally over years. Here's the part that rarely gets discussed clearly. Your kidneys do not rest while you sleep. They continue processing blood, regulating mineral concentrations, adjusting acid-base balance, and producing the hormonal signals that manage blood pressure, all without interruption, all night long, without any new fluid coming in to support that work. By the time your alarm sounds, your kidneys have been operating under mild fluid restriction for 6 to 8 hours. Your blood is slightly more concentrated. Your urine is darker and more saturated with the compounds your body has been trying to eliminate. The internal environment is primed for either a supportive reset or an additional stressor, depending entirely on what you choose to drink first. This is not about expensive supplements or complicated protocols. The 4 morning drinks we are going to walk through today are accessible, evidence-informed, and can be incorporated into any routine without disruption. What matters is understanding why each one works. The actual biological mechanism, not the vague wellness language. And equally important, understanding how each one can go wrong if prepared or consumed incorrectly. Because every drink on this list has a version that helps and a version that harms, and the difference is in the details. The first morning drink is unsweetened cranberry juice, and the reasons it belongs on this list are more specific than most people know. Cranberries have been associated with urinary tract health for decades in popular culture, but the mechanism behind that association is not what most people assume. The active compounds in cranberries, particularly a group of polyphenols called proanthocyanidins, work by interfering with the adhesion molecules that certain bacteria use to attach to the walls of the urinary tract. Instead of colonizing, those bacteria remain suspended in the urinary stream and are cleared through normal urination. The clinical significance of this is substantial. Urinary tract infections that are not cleared or not treated are a significant and underappreciated driver of kidney damage, because bacteria that ascend from the lower urinary tract to the kidneys can initiate an inflammatory response in kidney tissue called pyelonephritis that, if it recurs over years, contributes meaningfully to the chronic scarring that underlies kidney disease progression. Reducing the frequency of urinary tract infections is, in a very direct sense, protecting the kidneys from a specific category of insult that most conversations about kidney health fail to mention. Cranberry juice consumed regularly in the morning addresses this risk at the point of origin. The second mechanism is the vitamin C content. Cranberry juice is a natural source of ascorbic acid, and ascorbic acid functions as an antioxidant in the body's aqueous environments, including the blood that flows through the kidneys constantly. The filtration work the kidneys perform generates oxidative byproducts as a normal consequence of processing blood at high volume, and those byproducts, if not neutralized, accumulate and contribute to the gradual damage of kidney cell membranes. Vitamin C intercepts free radicals before they reach that stage, providing a layer of cellular protection for kidney tissue that is completely absent when the diet is poor in antioxidants. The third factor is the potassium profile. Cranberries are naturally low in potassium compared to most fruits, which matters because the kidney's ability to regulate potassium is one of the first functions to become impaired as kidney health declines. High potassium drinks consumed in quantity can push blood potassium toward levels that the compromised kidneys cannot safely manage, and those elevated levels create cardiovascular risks that are among the most serious consequences of kidney disease. Cranberry juice sidesteps this concern by providing fluid, antioxidants, and urinary tract protection without adding a potassium burden. The critical qualification is sugar. Commercial cranberry juice products are frequently sweetened aggressively because unsweetened cranberry is intensely tart, and the sugar used to make it palatable is the element that converts a genuinely kidney-supportive drink into one that drives the blood sugar spikes and vascular inflammation that accelerate kidney damage. The recommendation is unsweetened cranberry juice only, diluted generously with water in a ratio of roughly 1 part juice to 3 parts water, which makes the tartness manageable and also extends the hydration benefit. Adding a small amount of fresh lemon juice amplifies the antioxidant content without adding sugar. Fresh or frozen cranberries can also be simmered in water, strained and refrigerated to make a homemade version with no additives whatsoever. Consumed this way, First thing in the morning when the urinary environment is most concentrated and most susceptible to the bacterial adhesion that cranberry compounds prevent. Unsweetened cranberry juice earns its place as a genuine kidney protective choice. The second morning drink is green tea, and it works through mechanisms that are entirely different from cranberry juice, but equally well supported in the research literature on kidney function and renal nutrition. The active compounds in green tea are a family of polyphenols called catechins, with the most extensively studied being epigallocatechin gallate, commonly referenced as EGCG. These catechins are among the most potent plant-derived antioxidants identified in nutritional science, and their effects on kidney health operate across several distinct pathways simultaneously. The most immediately relevant is inflammation reduction. Chronic low-grade inflammation in kidney tissue is the common downstream pathway of nearly every form of kidney disease, whether the initiating cause was diabetes, hypertension, infection, or toxin exposure. The glomeruli, which are the microscopic filtration units within the kidney, are particularly vulnerable to inflammatory damage because of their structure and the pressure under which they operate. EGCG and related catechins suppress the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines and inhibit the activation of NF-κB, a molecular signaling pathway that functions as a master switch for the inflammatory response in tissue. Reducing inflammatory signaling in the kidney environment gives the glomeruli a less hostile operating environment and reduces the progressive scarring that inflammation drives over time. Green tea also specifically addresses kidney stone risk, which is a concern that tends to be managed reactively after a stone has caused pain or obstruction, rather than prevented proactively. The catechins in green tea reduce urinary oxalate concentration, which is significant because calcium oxalate is the most common composition of kidney stones. When oxalate levels in the urine are lower, the supersaturation threshold that triggers crystal formation is harder to reach, and the risk of stone formation is correspondingly reduced. Studies in clinical nutrition have found inverse associations between green tea consumption and kidney stone incidence in populations where both are measured. The blood pressure dimension rounds out the case. Hypertension is, alongside diabetes, the most prevalent cause of chronic kidney disease, and it operates through a mechanism of pressure-induced endothelial damage that gradually destroys the small blood vessels the kidneys depend on. Green tea consumption is associated with modest but consistent reductions in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure in clinical research, likely through endothelium-dependent vasodilation mediated by the catechin's effects on nitric oxide production. For someone whose kidneys are already operating under pressure stress, even modest blood pressure reduction translates into meaningfully reduced mechanical damage to renal microvasculature over time. The morning context is important here for a specific reason. Green tea contains caffeine, but at approximately one-third the concentration of coffee, and the caffeine in green tea is delivered in combination with an amino acid called L-theanine that modulates its stimulant effect, producing a state of calm alertness rather than the sharp spike and crash pattern that coffee produces. For the kidneys, this matters because the cortisol surge that accompanies a strong caffeine hit from coffee raises blood pressure transiently, which is exactly the kind of pressure stress that kidney tissue does not need first thing in the morning. Green tea provides the wakefulness without the hemodynamic spike. Preparation method affects the catechin content significantly. Water that is too hot destroys the antioxidant compounds before they can be consumed. The optimal temperature is around 175 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hot but not boiling. Steeping time should be 2 to 3 minutes for maximum catechin extraction without the bitterness that longer steeping produces. Nothing should be added that undermines the kidney benefit. No sugar, no sweetened milk. A slice of fresh lemon enhances the antioxidant stability and adds a pleasant flavor dimension that makes the drink more enjoyable without adding anything harmful. 1 to 2 cups is sufficient to deliver the research-supported benefits. More than that, for people who are caffeine sensitive or who have advanced kidney disease, should be discussed with a physician before becoming a daily habit. The third morning drink is a thoughtfully constructed berry-based smoothie, and this one requires the most careful explanation because the line between a kidney-supportive smoothie and a kidney-damaging one is thinner than most people appreciate. The core of a kidney-friendly morning smoothie is a combination of low-potassium, high-polyphenol berries as the primary ingredient and unsweetened plain yogurt as the liquid base. The berries, blueberries, and strawberries are consistently cited in the renal nutrition literature, provide two of the most important categories of plant compounds for kidney protection. The first is anthocyanins. The pigments responsible for the deep blue and red colors of these fruits, which have demonstrated anti-inflammatory and antioxidant activity in tissue at concentrations achievable through regular dietary consumption. The second is their relatively low potassium content compared to most fruits, which is a practical consideration that allows people managing kidney function to access berry nutrition without potassium overload. The mitochondrial connection is worth understanding because it is not commonly explained in kidney health content. The filtration cells in the kidneys, the tubular cells and podocytes that perform the actual work of separating waste from useful compounds in blood, are among the most metabolically demanding cells in the body. They require large quantities of ATP, which is produced by the mitochondria within each cell. Oxidative stress disproportionately damages mitochondria, and damaged mitochondria produce less ATP, which means the cells they power become less capable of performing their filtration function effectively. The polyphenols in blueberries and strawberries have been shown to protect mitochondrial membrane integrity and support mitochondrial biogenesis, the process by which cells generate new mitochondria to replace damaged ones. For kidney cells under chronic stress, this is not a peripheral benefit. It is central to their continued function. Unsweetened plain yogurt, as the base, serves two purposes. It provides a complete protein contribution that supports tissue maintenance, including kidney tubular cell maintenance, without the potassium concentration found in some other protein-containing foods, and it provides live probiotic cultures that support gut microbiome health. The gut-kidney axis is a recognized area of research in nephrology. The composition of the gut microbiome influences the production of uremic toxins, compounds like indoxyl sulfate and p-cresyl sulfate that are generated from microbial fermentation in the colon, and that when produced in excess, accumulate in the blood and accelerate kidney disease progression. A healthy gut microbiome produces fewer of these toxins, which reduces the filtration burden on the kidneys. Probiotic-rich yogurt consumed regularly in the morning contributes to the microbial balance that keeps uremic toxin production in check. The mistakes people make with smoothies are predictable and consequential. Adding fruit juice instead of whole fruit concentrates sugar without providing the fiber that moderates its absorption. Adding sweeteners, honey, maple syrup, flavored yogurts drives blood glucose spikes that damage the glomerular capillaries in a pattern nearly identical to poorly managed diabetes. Adding high-potassium fruits like bananas or avocados, which are common smoothie ingredients in general, healthy eating contexts, can be genuinely problematic for people whose kidneys are not efficiently managing potassium. And adding protein powders, which are often heavily processed and can contain significant phosphorus from food additives, introduces a risk that is not obvious from the product's general health positioning. The simplest version, half a cup of blueberries or strawberries blended with plain unsweetened yogurt and a small amount of water, is the version the evidence supports. Optional additions that do not add risk include a small amount of ground flaxseed for omega-3 fatty acids and fiber, or a modest amount of fresh spinach for folate and vitamin K, with the caveat that even spinach should be used sparingly by anyone managing potassium levels under medical guidance. The fourth morning drink is water, plain unflavored room temperature water, and it is last on this list not because it is least important. It is arguably the most important, but because it is the one that requires the most context to be understood correctly rather than taken for granted. The kidney's fundamental operating medium is water. Every process they perform, filtering blood, concentrating urine, excreting waste, regulating mineral balance, producing erythropoietin to stimulate red blood cell production, occurs in an aqueous environment that requires adequate hydration to function at capacity. When the body is dehydrated, the kidneys respond by conserving water, which means producing more concentrated urine. Concentrated urine is more saturated with the compounds that form kidney stones and more hospitable to bacterial growth. It also means reduced blood volume, which reduces perfusion pressure to the kidneys, the very pressure that drives filtration and forces them to work harder for less result. After 7 or 8 hours of sleep without fluid intake, the body wakes in a state of mild dehydration every single morning. This is not a crisis. It is a normal physiological state that healthy kidneys manage without difficulty. But it does mean that the kidneys arrive at the start of a new day operating below their optimal hydration baseline. And the first drink consumed is either correcting that deficit or adding to it. Water corrects it directly and without complication. A moderate amount of water consumed within the first 30 minutes of waking, sipped at a comfortable pace rather than consumed rapidly, begins restoring plasma volume, improves renal perfusion, and provides the fluid the kidneys need to resume efficient toxin clearance at full capacity. There is no metabolic processing required, no nutrient extraction, no digestive work, The water reaches the kidneys and supports their function within minutes. The quality consideration that matters most is what is not in the water. Flavored waters that contain artificial sweeteners, colorings, or acidic additives are not equivalent to plain water from a kidney perspective, even if their caloric content is negligible. Electrolyte drinks that are marketed for hydration contain sodium and potassium in concentrations that are inappropriate for daily morning consumption, except under specific athletic or medical circumstances. Carbonated water is not categorically harmful, but its acidity makes plain still water a more neutral choice for morning kidney support. Temperature is worth mentioning because it is genuinely relevant. Very cold water requires the body to expend energy warming it before it can be fully absorbed, which is a minor inefficiency. Room temperature water is absorbed more readily and tends to be gentler on the digestive system, which is relevant first thing in the morning when the gut is transitioning from its overnight state. The qualification that matters most here is the counterintuitive one. More water is not universally better. In people with advanced kidney disease whose filtration capacity is substantially reduced, excess fluid intake can accumulate rather than being excreted, leading to edema, elevated blood pressure, and additional cardiovascular stress. Water intake targets for people with kidney disease must be individualized based on their current kidney function, their urine output, and the guidance of their medical team. The broad population recommendation of 8 glasses of water daily is not an appropriate target for everyone, and applying it without medical context can cause harm. What is appropriate for everyone is starting the morning with a moderate amount, a cup to 2 cups, consumed slowly, which provides the rehydration benefit without any risk of fluid overload. Adding a slice of fresh lemon to morning water is a low-risk enhancement that contributes a small amount of citrate to the urinary environment. Citrate inhibits the crystallization of calcium oxalate and calcium phosphate, the mineral compounds that form the most common kidney stones, and increasing urinary citrate is in fact one of the established medical strategies for stone prevention. The amount of citrate in a lemon slice is modest compared to what is achievable through citrate supplementation, but as a daily morning habit accumulated over months and years, it represents a meaningful contribution to the environmental conditions that make stone formation less likely. What these 4 morning drinks share is a commitment to supporting the kidneys through the specific transition they face every morning, from overnight fluid restriction and passive filtration into the full demands of a new day. Unsweetened cranberry juice addresses bacterial adhesion in the urinary tract and provides antioxidant protection for kidney tissue. Green tea delivers catechins that reduce glomerular inflammation, lower urinary oxalate, and support the blood pressure regulation that kidney microvasculature depends on. A low-potassium, polyphenol-rich smoothie protects kidney cell mitochondria, reduces uremic toxin production through gut microbiome support, and provides complete protein for tissue maintenance. Plain water restores the hydration baseline that every other kidney function depends on. None of these drinks is complicated. None requires specialized sourcing or equipment. What each one requires is consistency, the accumulation of correct morning choices over time that shift the long-term trajectory of kidney function in a direction that delayed decline, reduced stone risk, and sustained filtration capacity represent. The kidneys are not dramatic organs. They do not announce their distress until that distress is advanced. The time to support them is before the announcement is made. And the morning when the body is reset and the day's choices are still unmade is exactly where that support begins.